April 27, 1925. John R. Lawler, a Civil War veteran and an aged resident of Oconto, died at his home in the town of Oconto Monday morning at 11 o'clock from the infirmities of old age. He was 84 years of age, but up to a week before his death he was exceedingly healthy and vigorous. John Lawler was born in Carlow County, Ireland, February 23, 1841, and came to Oconto County in 1862. In 1874, he was married to Mary Mullet, who died in 1884. July 18, 1885, he was married to Mary Murray, who survives him. Mr. Lawler has been a farmer in the town of Oconto for many years, during which time he held numerous school and town offices. He is survived by his wife and 12 children. The funeral was held Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock from St. Joseph's Church. Reverend Father Becker officiated. Burial was in the Catholic cemetery. The pallbearers were Frank Carey, Ed Clausen, Ed Couillard, John Merline, Henry Merline, and John Runkle. With the passing of time, once familiar Couillardville family names sometimes fade from the collective memory. Earlier generations die out. Sons and daughters move away to seek new opportunities. The Lawler family is a good example. Though they were a very large local presence at one time, not many still remember when they were an integral part of life in Couillardville. Yet their influence on the community and its inhabitants continues to matter to this day, though perhaps in not so obvious ways. The origins of the Couillardville Lawlers trace back to County Carlow, Ireland, where Murtaugh Lawler was born in 1789. He and his wife, Catherine Sparrow, along with their young son, John, born in 1841, were caught up in the midst of the Irish potato famine, which first appeared in County Carlow in September 1845. By the following spring, as much as one-half the crop had been destroyed, leading to widespread hunger, poverty, unemployment, and destitution. By the end of 1846, the crop had completely failed, with devastating consequences for the laboring classes. Around 1850, Murtaugh and his family joined thousands of other Irish peasants by immigrating to New York. They moved on to Oconto in 1862. It was son John who established the family farm in Couillardville, where he and his bride, Mary Mullet, also an Irish native, raised their 3 daughters and 2 sons. Their third son, baby Robert, lived only a few months. Their fourth-born child, daughter Margaret, known as Maggie, would grow up to marry James Harold, another native-born Irishman, and raise a handsome family of 3 daughters and 5 sons on Harold Hill. Their farm on North River Road is now owned by their great-grandson, Dennis Harold. Tragedy struck the growing Lawler family when Mary took sick and died in 1884. Faced with the challenges of establishing a thriving farm while nurturing his young children, John soon took a new bride. Mary Murray also came from Ireland and is thought to have been related to Mary Mullet. She clearly knew what she was getting into, so must have been quite happy to take over the duties as the matriarch of her new, ready-made family. Indeed, the evidence suggests that Mary Murray was born to be a mother, since she and John immediately set out to dramatically expand the Lawler clan. Her 5 stepchildren, Catherine, Murtaugh, Aidan, Margaret, and Hannah, were soon joined by Mary, known as May, in 1887, John R. in 1889, Eleonora in 1890, Ethel in 1892, William in 1893, Robert C. in 1894, Gladys in 1896, and Harley, also known as Edward, in 1898. That's 13 kids the total, but who's counting? The Lawler farm was located at the north end of the present-day Glen Road near the Oconto River. It was a fine piece of property that reliably nurtured the expanding Lawler clan. However, the very size of the family greatly complicated the division of the land as the sons came of age and started thinking about careers of their own. As it happened, when John died in 1925 at the ripe old age of 84, the children rallied around to help their mother continue operating the farm. It later passed to John and Mary Murray, Lawler's daughter, Eleonora, known to all as Nora, and her husband, Dennis Johnson. For a number of years, their son Maynard, born in 1920, would continue to help work the farm whenever his help was needed. His sister Mary, born in 1922, established her own lifelong connections to the community through her marriage to John, also known as Jack Carey, the son of Frank and Louise Carey and the younger brother of Couillardville legend Norb Carey. For the other Lawler children, their challenge was to establish new careers of their own, whether as farmers, wives and mothers, professional people, or whatever. Inevitably, this led most of them to pursuits far beyond the rich soils along the Oconto River. For instance, Robert, the third son of John's second family, had married Hazel Rainier around the time that his father died. Though the newlyweds had no expectations of inheriting the Couillardville property, they stayed on for several years to help operate the family business and ease the transition. Their daughter Claudine was born on the farm in 1926, as was their daughter Beverly in 1935. Their son John, or Jack, was born in 1940 on the farm in Lena. Claudine attended Couillardville's one-room school through the 4th grade. As it happened, Hazel Rainier's parents, who grew up in the Stiles and Pensacola areas, owned a considerable amount of farmland near Lena, where they operated a large dairy enterprise. So during the waning days of the Great Depression, they invited their daughter and son-in-law to join them there and take over the family farm. Beverly, though hardly 3 years old, still has hazy memories of the move to her new home. Claudine continued to live with Grandma Lawler at the Couillardville farm until she finished school that spring. Sometime later, Grandma Lawler moved to Lena to live with the Robert Lawler family, where she died in 1940. Bev said she learned about the virtue of hard work from her early age, first helping her mother in the kitchen and doing small chores around the farmyard. By the time she was 10 years old, she was even helping out in the fields, especially at thrashing time. Without many boys in the neighborhood, she ended up driving the tractor that delivered the bundles to the thrashing machine. This experience also founded her lifelong aversion to mice. Fortunately for Bev, her future lay not in the fertile grain fields of Oconto County with their legions of field mice come harvest time, but in the classroom.
My name is Bev Lawler. I was born in Couillardville on February 8th of 1935. I do remember as a young girl going out and watching my mom, trying to help her, but I'm sure I didn't, shock the oats, the grain and so on. And I also remember how he'd come back in the house and she'd make big meals for all the trashing crew. And, you know, at that time farmers went to one another's places and helped out. And as I became a little older, my brother wasn't old enough, so I became the tractor driver. And I do recall that sometimes the neighbors would come and ask if my dad would go, and you know, because they exchanged help. But they also asked for me for the driver, and I always said, never allow them to ask just for me because I don't go any place where you don't go. And we didn't have a whole lot of boys in the neighborhood at that time. Don't ask me why I learned how to drive the tractor, but I did. And as a result, a lot of times I found myself out in the fields driving the tractor. Yeah. And I think probably this is why to this day, I don't like mice, because the young guys that would be working on the trashing crews and so on, they would love to, they'd always find mice out in those shocks and so on. They'd love to put the mice in the exhaust. The exhaust used to be up on the top of the tractor. And they'd say, Bev, shut the tractor off. Well, I'm only a kid, so I followed what they'd do, and then, okay, now start it, and blow up the mice would go flying. To this day, I think that's why I hate mice. I can't stand them.
She credits her 46-year career as a teacher in and around Lena and then Green Bay to the values she learned from her parents on the farm. Though Bev and her parents left Couillardville before World War II, she and they always remained close to the family and friends they left behind. Mending connections, strengthening relationships, sharing experiences, building new ties. That's what community means. And that's what Couillardville is all about.